Hi everyone, this is Raquel from scrapcosy, and today I'm going to show you how to create 3 different models of covers using my stamps and stencils along with infusions. I'll use these covers to bind the tags that I've made for my video series all about infusions, in which I explain many techniques on how to use these products. Today's video is basically the make and take I gave at Crafting at Ali Pali in April 2017. Let's get started. My covers are grey chipboard, and because it's grey, I don't like that color and I'm going to cover it with white. There is another reason for covering it with white, is that we will be using infusions on top of this, and if we apply it directly on grey, we wouldn't appreciate all the colors that infusions have, so we need basically a clear base. I'm applying it with a sponge, so then I get a uniform layer and I only apply the amount that I need. It dries very quickly, but I'm just ensuring that it dries perfectly okay with the help of a heat gun. With a pencil, I'm marking 2 lines, and then with a black permanent pen, I'm marking a line, so then I can divide my cover in 3 parts. Those would be like 3 wood panels. And I'm masking the part that I'm not going to work on now, so then I don't put any infusions over it. I'm mixing a little bit of glaze with just a tiny amount of gold fresco paint. I'm applying infusions on the first panel block, and then with a sponge I'm just loading it with glaze and gold, and I'm extending infusions. I have my first panel done. I'm drying it with the heat gun to ensure it's completely dry before I move on to the next section. I use my stencil as a ruler to make my line. And now I have the 3 sections that I was talking about before. So with post-it notes, I mask the zones that I don't want to cover now, and I'll leave only the zone in the middle so I can apply the glaze and extend the infusions. As you can see, I'm using vertical strokes because I want to mimic the wood lines. After drying, I just need to complete the panel by working on the final part in the same way that I did before. And as you see, the 3 different pieces look different, and that's the whole point of it, to kind of fake a wood panel made of 3 different pieces of wood. Before stamping, I will do a previous step, which is applying and stencil. I'll use some ink, the same ink that I'll be using for stamping, so then everything coordinates and matches because it will be the same color. And using a sponge, I'm just applying it through, and you'll see the nice effect that it gives. It really seems like an old signboard. With the same sponge, I'm aging the borders to kind of frame my cover. Now I'm applying VersaFine ink on top of my stamp because I will be stamping. I need to press down to make sure that all the detail is transferred into my fake wood panels. And because I'm stamping on a non-porous surface, I'll make sure that I dry it completely. Otherwise we could cause a mess in the next step. If you don't have a heat gun, you can just place a paper towel on top of your image and press down with your hand, so that you absorb any ink that is not pressed down onto the surface. I'm adding just a little touch over there with another stamp of the stamp set. And I'm making sure that I dry it. My next step will be coloring the image. This is a very fun technique that I really like recently, and it just consists of mixing some glaze with infusions very thoroughly, so then you actually get the final color of the pot, and then you apply it on top of your image. And as you can see, I'm applying very little infusions because it's very clear what I'm applying there. This is because I want to keep as much detail as I can on the stamp and don't add more texture with the glaze, because otherwise I wouldn't see the details. And by mixing infusions with the glaze, I'm just getting my own acrylic translucent paint. And I just want a washed effect on top of it. I think it looks nice this way. I'm cleaning my brush to remove all the olive tree infusions color because I'll move on to the next color, which is raspberry. Both colors are in the new palette of 12 colors released by PaperArtsy on February 2017, and they are gorgeous. I overwork the raspberry very much because I want to get that walnut completely dissolved, so then my color is not that pink and it's more muted, more brownish thanks to the walnut, and it will give this vintage look which I'm looking for now. Just need to dry this before the final step, which will be applying a little bit of fresco gold paint on the borders. Just to finish it up, so I don't see those grey borders there. And not much left to do on this one. Do you like how it turned out? And you can see the little shimmer of the gold there. Here you can see all the details of this first cover. I love it. And here it's what the make and take would look like if you had come to crafting at Tally Valley. But you can make it at home very easily, just following this video. The next cover, we will do the same steps, covering first with acrylic paint in white or cream. Drying it a little bit to ensure that I can move on to the next step. And dividing my panel in 3. Again, I'm marking the lines by eyeballing them with pencil first, more or less. You could use a ruler if you want to be a little bit more precise. And then with my stencil, I'm just marking those lines with a permanent pen in black. If it's not permanent, when you apply the glaze, if it's not dry, it will move along, so you better get a permanent one. Or you can substitute this by a pencil. The pencil also gives very nice results. So again, I'm mixing a little bit of glaze with a tiny bit of gold fresco to get this extra shine. So with that mix in my sponge, I will extend my infusions on the first section of the wood panel. If you think that you don't have enough, you can always add a little bit more. Make sure it's completely dry before you put the next post-it note, otherwise it could get sticked and you cannot remove it then. And I'm extending it in the next section. So 2 of 3, dry again, and mask again. Easy peasy. The idea behind all this masking is that if you repeat this independently, you should get different tones and different colors, because we are applying different amount of infusions, and then it's kind of a way of simulate a wood panel which is made of 3 different wood pieces, which shouldn't be related at all because they are just wood, right? So now the next step is going to apply again with the stencil few words, and I'm using again the same ink as I will use when I stamp. In this way everything will coordinate. In this case, I'm selecting the word Dahlia and the word Paris. I really like to apply the ink through the stencil in this way because it gives like a result of a wood that had been burnt using those stamps made of metal, like in a barrel or so they look very nice. And now what I'm doing is stamping the little agapanthus plant, one of my favorite ones as well, especially for coloring because it has wide open areas. I'm edging the edges with the remaining ink on my sponge. I would have done that before stamping next time. I didn't mess it up, but you could if you actually hold your finger on top of the stamp and it was not completely dry. The next step, as you saw before, is applying some glaze with infusions to color my image. For my background I use Rusty Car, and I really like that color, so I wanted to keep on that brownish palette. So instead of just mixing raspberry with glaze, I'm mixing raspberry and Rusty Car with glaze, so then I get a more brownish pink. If for whatever reason, as it happened to me here, you put too much infusions and very little glaze and then you get a too much intense color, then you just need to add a little bit more glaze and then you'll soften that color and you'll make it more translucent. And I think it's really important to do this, especially with this type of stamps, because they are very detailed images, and if you add too much infusions, then you will lose that detail because you will not be able to see it because it's covered. Now I clean my brush and I change to the next color, which is Olive Tree, so then I can paint the leaves and the stems. And now the only thing remaining is about putting a little bit of gold fresco paint on the borders to finish it up. So here are both the front cover and the back cover, and I'm mounting those to make like a little booklet of all my infusion samples that I did as part of my All About Infusion series of videos. Now they look very nice all together. And here are the details so you can see how it looks like. And now let's move on to the third and final model. For this one I will not make any divisions, I will just make a uniform layer. Again, I'm starting as before, applying a white base and making sure it's completely dry. Next, with some glaze and some gold fresco paint, I will be applying some infusions directly on top of the surface. This time, as I said, no divisions, but I'm applying it very lightly because I want to keep as many lines as I can. And those lines are created because of infusions being a group of multiple colors which actually at the end form the color of the bottle. So to create this olive tree we have different hints of greens, blues and some yellows, and also walnut is there, so you can get sometimes very nice brown lines. Now with the stencils I'm deciding what I want to put next. And what I'm doing is applying some glaze on the sponge and then some infusions on it, massaging it through as Leandra once explained to me, and then I'll just apply it on top of my stencil. You need to be very careful, not load it too much with glaze and not overwork, because you could go underneath the stencil and then it could be a complete disaster. On the top one I'm putting seeds, a little bit lighter this time and with a little bit more of care. And as you will see, the space left between the two words will not be that big as to put my cabbage on. So what I'm going to do is overlap my stamp with the top word, seeds, so then it fades through and it will look very nice actually. This time I'm using black ink, VersaFine Onyx Black. And I'm applying it on top, making sure that I press very well so then I get all the detail that I can. And then it's time for drying it. Here I'm trying with no success to apply a little bit of green borders using my sponge, but well, as you can see, it's not loaded at all anymore, so well, I'll fix that later. Again, by mixing some glaze with infusions, I'm creating my own translucent paint. And as you can see, I'm not being very mindful. I'm just extending the color all over the place because the actual cabbage has already all the shadow that it needs. And as by magic, it pops out from the wood panel. Can you see that? It seems it's now just there, a cabbage, a real one. I really love olive trees, my favorite color I believe. Well, I have many favorites. Now I'm changing it a little bit and I'm adding some golden sands, which is from the original 12 color palette. And I'm applying it to the back of the stamp. If you put more infusions in the same mix that you have, then you get a more intense color, and that will help me to highlight some parts like those little filigrees there and the badge. It's really pleasant to actually grab a brush and paint on top of a stamped image, especially if it's already shadow for you, that you don't need to take care very much of it and you just, well, paint it and see it come naturally and very nice, as if it's alive. I could spend a lot of time coloring these images, I don't know, I have fun. So I'm about to finish this cover as well, not much left to do. What I will be doing is aging the edges a little bit. This time again I use the same technique as before, just applying some ink. And then with some gold fresco paint, I will paint the borders. And that's all for today basically. I hope you had fun, you liked it, and I hope that you try yourself to do it. Creating your wood effect is very easy, and creating your covers out of this chipboard is also very simple. You just need to cut and make the holes. So then you have no excuse to create your own tags of all about infusions and bind them very nicely with these very nice covers. I hope you had fun, and I would really appreciate a comment, a thumbs up, or even that you can subscribe to my YouTube channel if you like it and you want to see more like this. Thanks very much and see you in the next video. Bye!